what I would like to show you now is how in each folder we can go into here and take a look at how things are organized on an item level. Now, the LaRocca collection did have an inventory made for it several years ago in the 1970s, but unfortunately, with so much going on in the Hogan, there's only so much that can be done with this extensive collection. What my job was to do was to take these items and put them into an online finding aid, which is ultimately what Archon is best used for, making an online finding aid to aid researchers in their work. The beauty of Archon, once you go through and enter these items, is you can eventually make everything in your archive available online. The problem is that ultimately it does require some manual input, and that's what I did for much of my internship. Was I looked at each item and I would determine what kind of item it was. So for instance, item 8, I have a clipping from an unknown paper about Frank Hales. Well, much of this particular folder was clippings not relating to Nick LaRocca, but probably from his personal collection, stuff that he found interesting that he collected on his own. So I would have to take a look at these particular items and ultimately determine, well, what they were and the year that we were talking about, which is a very laborious process if you don't have any information really available to you. So this folder was particularly difficult. As the collection goes on and moves into later dates, the collection is much easier to process because these dates are very evident sometimes from the clippings. Now I want to go ahead and go into folder 5, and I'm going to be inputting the entry for a letter from Mr. LaRocca. By 1920, the original Dixieland Jazz Band was at the height of its popularity. They had been contracted overseas to go and play in a very popular dance club called the Palais de Danse in Hammersmith. So what we're going to be taking a look at is this particular letter. Now, as I said, each item that goes into Archon needs to be input manually. In addition to that, if you would like to include digital content like this letter, you do need to scan that manually and then input it additionally into the system. This can be a very, very laborious process, unfortunately, because Archon is limited to the size of documents that can be input to the database. So even scanning in each letter like this, there's an additional step of having to edit it and make sure that it's the correct size. I have already scanned this item and I've already sized it to the proper size for Archon, so we don't need to worry about that now. But what I'm going to do is go here into the entry form, and we're going to make sure that it's level container size item 1, and I'm going to input the number 1. And the particular title of this item I've already typed out, and we know that it is a letter to B.H. Thomas. So we are going to take that information and we're going to go back here and we're going to input that into our title. Now this, it may seem very, very simple for a title, but oftentimes you don't want to bog down your entries with too much information. Keeping the title simple is the best way I found to input all of this information, because ultimately in this description level you can go into more detail what this letter to B.H. Thomas is about. So because this particular collection is organized by year and not by the type of item it is, for instance by correspondence of letters, looking at pictures, looking at posters, it all goes by year, I found that organizing all the entries into this particular system, identifying what it is initially, be it a letter or a poster, and then identifying a very simple information about that, so letter to B.H. Thomas, it will help researchers down the road who particularly want to look at letters from LaRocca to somebody else. So if they were to type in letter 2 in the search field, they would eventually be able to pull up all the letters from LaRocca to other correspondents, and they would be able to identify what folders contain those particular items. So this letter is dated March 20th, 1920, so I'm going to copy that information. I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to paste it in, March 20th, 1920, and I'm also going to copy all this information, and I'm going to input it into this description. What I tried to do for many of the letters was transcribe what I could. For this one, I'm just going to keep it very simple because this will be something I go back later and fix. Again, we are constrained by the time that we have, so I did want to put up as much as I possibly could in the 10 weeks I was working in the Hogan. So many of the entries I did keep simple, but what would the beautiful, most ultimate goal of this project would be to transcribe these letters and incorporate online scans of everything. So now we have our entry here in the item level, and we see that it is the letter to B.H. Thomas, the letter regarding songs Tell Me and Blowing Bubbles. Now I'm going to go to this section, Add or Edit Digital Content, and this is the coolest part of Archon, where we can go in and actually add this letter that we've already put in the entry for. So I am going to go down here and add the associated collection. I don't need to add the title or anything yet because we haven't added any of the information for this particular document. So I'm going to wait for that to come up, and now it is going to ask me if I can go here. I'm going to click on letter to B.H. Thomas, and it is going to give me a upload file. So we're going to go here, and we have already gone ahead and made sure that we resized everything. So I am going to go into my removable disk. I am going to look at this and open it up. And hopefully, if we upload this thing right, it will upload successfully. And we should receive the prompt here any second, hopefully. Again, it's a little hinky, but there we go. It updated successfully, so now we have integrated this particular file into our Archon system. So we're going to make sure that it's web-enabled so people can view it online. But now when we add new or update files, we will now make this particular item available to our patrons, which is exactly what we want to do. So I am going to just correct the mistake I just made. And now when we go back, if I were to do a search in the Nick LaRocca collection, if I do D.H. Thomas, and what should come up now is records and manuscripts. We're going to look at that. Oh, no, it did not come up as I was hoping. B.H. Thomas, because I had forgotten to do that. So we're going to take a look at B. Thomas. We're going to see what comes up. We have digital images and records. That's exactly what we want to do. And here is letter to B.H. Thomas. So we pull that up, and now we have the letter there available for researchers to look at. So again, ultimately the goal of this Archon system for Tulane University is to make all of this content available online. Unfortunately, we just have to take it one step at a time, as Dr. Rayburn says. But as you can see from the system, it can be very, very useful to researchers who want to, again, find out if there's this letter to B.H. Thomas out there. We have the availability to download it. They can look at it themselves by keeping it and using it in their own research. So it's a wonderful system that will help researchers use this information and not have to go and come into the archive. But again, one step at a time.